The Bottle, First Drink. The band had been around since the early days of high school. It was three friends who played a style of punk music that really has no fans. Over the years, the three teens solidified their friendships playing shows and partying together. Sometimes they felt invincible. As the partying intensified, the booze bottle, who was the drummer in the band, began to sink into alcoholism. Something his two friends noticed as his quick playing in the band began to falter. He had trouble keeping time on his kit and would constantly miss shows altogether, choosing to drink alone. His two friends avoided the brewing storm and hoped the situation would correct itself and they could get back to playing that kind of punk that really has no fans. The booze bottle realized he had a problem, but chose to ignore it and made excuses for his troubling behavior. Over the course of the next year and a half, the band played a total of 5 shows because the booze bottle could not stay sober and channel his energy into his kit like he did in the past. The sellout, who played guitar in the band and was in charge of main vocals, began to resent the booze bottle and his troubled ways. He felt like the booze bottle had ruined the band and could not handle himself and his drinking. He told the bassist, the AA Angel, that he wanted the booze bottle gone and that he was sick of trying to help him when it's clear that he didn't want help. The AA Angel saw the situation differently. He argued that the booze bottle was sick and that if they gave up on him, he would surely get worse. He told the sellout that he thought that the two friends should not give up on him and they had the duty to stand by their friend who had shared so many good times with them over the years. After all, the three of them had known each other since elementary school. The two band members decided to go to the dive bar where they always drank to further their discussion about the fate of the booze bottle. It was there they met Necktats, also known as Davies. The Necktats had the style down. He was a put-together punk who was eager to tell anyone who listened that he was a drummer. His body was head to toe in ink. His most standout piece was a big Cadillac symbol tattooed across his whole neck. It was an extremely standout tat. He approached the sellout and the AA Angel and asked if they were local. The two got along and talked all night, while the AA Angel was in his own world worrying about his friend the booze bottle. Around closing, the Necktats left his mobile number with the sellout and told him to call him to help him integrate into the local scene. The sellout agreed to contact him, and the two men in their early 20s fist bumped and the Necktats turned and left the bar. The two remaining boy bands decided that maybe a vacation was in order so they could get the booze bottle and confront him about his problem in a relaxed environment. The sellout suggested a little place called Enderby, British Columbia, Canada, to go on a snowboard mission in the gigantic mountains covered in majestic, sick pow. The AA Angel reminded the sellout that the booze bottle didn't snowboard, but was assured that there were places for him to relax there in town. The AA Angel was tasked with finding the booze bottle and getting him on the plane. It appeared the booze bottle had fallen completely off the map. His mobile was going to voicemail and his apartment looked empty and dark. The AA Angel soldiered on, committed to finding his drowning friend. He looked far and wide, to no avail. He caught a lead when he bumped into an old high school chum who said he'd seen the booze bottle looking rough in a small plaza on the outskirts of town. He was right. As soon as the AA Angel arrived at the rundown plaza, he found his struggling friend passed out in the bathroom with what appeared to be a cup of hand sanitizer beside him. The AA Angel picked up his friend and dragged his lifeless body into a cab, which whisked both of them back to his place. When the three met at the airport on the day of their departure, the sellout had words for the booze bottle. He immediately commented on his appearance and told him that he needed to pull himself together. The AA Bible quickly changed the topic of interest and started musing about planning an upcoming tour for the band that plays that style of punk that has no fans. When the boarding call was called, the three amigos boarded the plane to British Columbia, Canada. Second drink. The ragtag group of three landed at Vancouver International Airport and took a Greyhound bus to Enderby. They checked into their bed and breakfast and went to sleep in order for them to have their batteries fully charged for the next day. The booze bottle stayed sober that night. The next morning, the sellout was up extra early to prep all his gear for his snowboarding extravaganza. The AA Angel woke up shortly after and reluctantly packed his snow gear. He didn't really like snowboarding either, and did it basically to make his friend happy, who loved it. He didn't really like snowboarding, but went along with it because his friend enjoyed it. The booze bottle stayed in bed, and because of his dislike for anything POW, he explained that he was just going to chill in town and wait for them to come back from the mountain. The AA Angel quietly slipped the booze bottle some cash while the sellout told him he had better not be drunk when they returned. The two snowboys jumped in the shuttle to the mountain and the booze bottle went back to bed. When the problematic band member finally arose from his external slumber, he decided to go find out what Enderby had to offer. He quickly realized there was not much there. The urge for a drink was growing along with his boredom, as those feelings go hand in hand. He decided to quench his thirst at what appeared to be the only establishment in town, the Small Axe Roadhouse. He was in shock when he walked in the door and noticed a propaganda "How to Clean Everything" record flamed on the wall and staff that looked like they popped out of a popular scenester bar in Orange County. He then noticed a little picture on the wall with a cross and the words "East Van" scrawled on the cross. He had no idea what this little picture represents, so he Googled it. He found out that East Van is a down-and-out part of the city that has problems with drug use and largely serves a transient-type lifestyle. East Van also has a local art scene. It was at that moment he decided that he hated the Small Axe Bistro. He sat himself down up at the bar and ordered a beer on draft. The bar was void of patrons. After all, it was only 3 p.m. He tried to take it easy, but his anger at the decor and the staff of the bar was eating away at his soul. As hours passed and the pints were downed, he realized that the money his good friend had given him had almost evaporated. By this point, the bar was littered with customers of all sectors of society. With his inhibitions down the drain, the booze bottle decided that it was a good idea to approach 3 young men wearing sombreros and ask them to buy him a pint. To his dismay, he was roundly rejected by the 3 men, and out of anger, embarrassment, and drunkenness, he told the 3 men that they looked stupid in their hats and it looked like they were going to some sort of gay dude ranch. He then splashed beer in their faces and walked away calmly. The bartender took notice of this situation and immediately intervened, telling the booze bottle that he must say sorry and only sit at the bar. He was told to order food and was not allowed another drink until he ate the food and pounded 3 pints of water. The barmaid was being nice. She could tell he was from out of town and had serious problems inside him. Or was it because Enderby has no local police and she was scared to kick him out? Either or, he stayed. The bartender took notice of this situation and immediately intervened, telling the booze bottle that he must say sorry and only sit at the bar. He was told to order food and was not allowed another drink until he ate the food and pounded 3 pints of water. The barmaid was being nice. She could tell he was from out of town and had serious problems inside him. Or was it because Enderby has no local police and she was scared to kick him out? Either or, he stayed. The night was getting late and the booze bottle was wondering where his snow friends were. He figured taking the night ride. As last call loomed, there was a sudden influx of 20-somethings. He figured transplants from East Van, and it made him mad. One girl sat beside him at the bar and gave him a fake smile. As the booze bottle tried to pour his own pint when the barmaid had her back turned, the tattooed-up 20-something alerted her as to what was going on. This caused chaos with the three people arguing over each other about what really happened. Just as the situation was escalating into a shouting match, the Snow Brothers finally arrived. Upon assessing the situation, it was clear to them that the booze bottle was in a wee spot of trouble. The girl with all the tattoos was screaming, saying the booze bottle was a loser and asking how he can get so drunk in public. The AA angel intervened and tried to pull his drunken friend away from the situation, but she was met with resistance, so we let it go. After about 4 minutes of name-calling, threats, and intoxication, the sellout finally had enough and made the point known to everyone in the small acts that the two Snow Bros were leaving their drunken friend behind to save face, and they left the acts. At the hotel, the AA Bible could not help but think of his drowning friend at the bar. He noticed that the sellout was glued to his cell phone and walked over to see what he was watching. It turned out to be a clip of that neck tats guy they had met a couple days earlier in their hometown. He was playing drums. The AA Bible realized this was his time to disappear and go prop his struggling friend up again. He walked out of the hotel room and the sellout did not even notice he left. He was enthralled by the neck tats. The AA Bible returned to the Small Axe Bistro to find it closed. He located his waterlogged friend outside. He came upon a scene where the girl in tats was berating his friend outside the closed bar and basically calling him a total waste of time. The AA Bible could not help but think to himself that the girl had probably had a couple too many at least one time in her life. After all, most people do at some point. He wondered how can people be so judgmental. He convinced his friends to give up the shouting match and helped him back to the hotel, where he slept in the bathtub fully clothed. The next morning, the AA Bible was woken up by the sellout's raised voice in the bathroom trying to get the booze bottle out of the bathtub, as he wanted to take a shower. They packed their things, shuttled back to Vancouver, and flew home. Third drink. Upon arrival in their native land, the three bandmates went their separate ways, and that was that. Over the next couple of weeks, the AA Bible was bombarded by videos of this mysterious neck tats guy playing drums which had been sent to him by the sellout. He watched the video and concluded that, sure, he can drum, but there is something missing in his style. It simply was not tight enough. Another thing that he could not help but notice was his put-together punk attire. He likes to wear his hat sideways. Two weeks later, we got a call from the sellout who was concerned with the direction of the band and called an emergency band meeting in the garage. Again, the A Bible was tasked with locating his sudsy friend and making him appear in the garage. He found him in a local park asleep on a bench, missing his shoes. He figured some homeless person had stolen them while he was sleeping. He got him up, got him talking, and took him to Foot Locker to get him some shoes before heading to the As soon as the two friends arrived in the garage, they knew the sellout meant business by the tone in his voice. He immediately started into his disheveled friend about his appearance and the fact that he reeked of Cobra malt liquor at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. The two friends began arguing, and it led to the sellout proclaiming that his drunken friend can only lean on him for so long, and he was sick of the booze bottle standing on the ledge only to come down. This enraged the booze bottle as he thought his so-called friend had gone too far. Voices were raised, and in the end the booze bottle was booted from the band because he was an unreliable liability, whatever that means. The booze bottle picked up his sticks and smashed them through his snare drum on the way out. The AA Bible looked at his sellout friend and looked at him with the expression on his face that meant, So I guess we need a new drummer. The sellout whipped out his phone and played a video of the neck tat guy and gave his friend a look that meant, and I know, just a guy. It was at that moment that A.A. Bible realized that his friend was wearing his hat sideways at that very moment in time. In the end, Davis, aka the Neck Tats, changed the name of the band from Mary the Maid to Kick 482. He said it just sounds better. He said he wanted to get away from that style of punk that has no fans and move forward with the progressive style that the kids want. He suggested the band go to the mall and shop at West 49 because it was more marketable than dressing like you're basically on a hockey team. He suggested when playing shows they get involved with some sort of ambience that was lacking during Mary the Maid's past gigs. The AA Bible was taken back at all these new changes, but could not stop wondering why his two bandmates had their hats on sideways. In the end, he felt like he had no choice but to go along with what they wanted, and how much this new band reminded him of that bar in Enderby. Rehearsals were scheduled for the coming week, and the meeting was over. They parted ways. Two days later, there was a knock at the AA Bible's door at 4 a.m. That startled him at first. He thought it was a police raid that was at the wrong house, but answered the door to find the booze bottle in a bad way. He was invited in and 2 beers were placed on the kitchen table. The question started immediately. He wanted answers, and what he got was runaround until it got to the point where the AA Bible was backed into a corner and had no other choice but to admit the new drummer was the guy with the neck tats from the bar that was new on the scene. After hearing this news, the booze bottle pulled a stupid face and his friend just nodded back. It's all he could do. The name change was discussed and more stupid faces were made about what the fuck that name even means. That night the 2 friends slept in the living room on couches together. When the AA Bible woke up, his friend was already gone and he noticed a bottle of scotch was missing. He brushed it off. It's all he could do. The first Monday before the rehearsal, Davik, aka the Neck Tats, summoned his bandmates to some corporate skate shop, West 49 it was called, in the mall. All the AA Bible could think about was finding one garm in the place that was not plastered in corporate logos, while his bandmates looked for the flashiest things in the shop. He settled on a consolidated hoodie with a little diamond you could barely see. The Neck Tats bought his credit card and bought all the clothing, claiming it was from the owner of Skinny Records and CEO named Skinny Steven. The rehearsal turned out to be a nightmare with the new style, but they managed to finish one song. The sellout wrote the lyrics and the Neck Tat oversaw the musical side of it. The AA Bible struggled so much with the new sound he did not even bother listening to the lyrics. It was entitled Sinking Ship. The song was turned into a 1-song demo tape and sent off to Skinny Steven and his label called Skinny Records. He has never heard of it until today. A video of the rehearsal was also made. Upon reviewing the video, it became clear to the AA Bible that this band was something totally different from the norm. He thought he looked out of place compared to his bandmates who had their hats on sideways. He also noticed that his bandmates were wearing matching DC shoes, and again, his mind drifted to Enderby in that bar. They put the cassette in and the video was sealed in an envelope and it was sent off to Skinny Steven at Skinny Records. All they could do now is wait. In the end, the AA Bible was wondering why his bandmates were dressed like that and if Avril Lavigne had written the song because it sounded so mainstream. In the end, he went along with them. It's all he could do at this point. The response from Skinny Records was prompt. They were signed by the label and told to get professional modeling headshots done to put on the album. Again, the A.A. Bible thought that was a strange request, but went along with it. He had no other choice at this point. The headshots were pictured, and upon seeing them, the A.A. Bible thought, I look so out of place beside these guys. I wonder if anyone else will notice that. The headshots were express mailed to Skinny Stephen, and the band waited for his reply, which was swift because they were learning that Skinny's style. His reply said that he needed to have the band fly out to the headquarters, which was in the Emerald City in Kansas, immediately, and re-record the single as it was not up to par for radio play, and he wanted to reshoot the video to make it look more professional. The plane tickets were attached to the letter and the date was set. The boys were going to the Ad Astra Aspera State, Kansas. Upon arrival, the band noticed it was quite dark at night in Kansas, but they managed to persevere, and with great difficulty found their way under the stars to Skinny Stephen's address. Upon arrival, it appeared that the land was a simple bungalow, not a recording studio, that the Necktats had said it was. They moved up the property and realized that there was a rather large barn-looking like building which loomed in the shadows behind the modest home. They walked onto the porch of the house and knocked on the door. Within seconds, Skinny appeared with his hat on sideways in the doorframe, holding a light bright that glowed "Welcome to the Land of Oz, where stars are made. Kick 482." The members of Kick 482 looked at each other with confusion in their eyes and stared back at Skinny for his reaction. The owner of the property turned around and had "Follow Me" scrawled on his back of his white t-shirt. He began walking into the darkness of his home. The three bewildered men reluctantly followed Skinny all the way through the unlit house onto the back porch. Just then, two massive spotlights turned on, aimed at the barn-like structure, revealing a neon green metal building the size of an aircraft hangar. The owner of Skinny Records walked up to the 15-foot-high door and spun a safe-like lock to reveal a massive recording studio/movie production site that looked like it was owned by MGM Grand. Skinny got to work immediately with wardrobe. The A.A. Bible looked at the rack of clothing and thought, great, this is more stuff that looks like it's from that mall skate shop West 49. He immediately started to panic. The sellout and the Necktats ran over to the rack and started wearing clothes. The A.A. Bible stepped back and wondered why his bandmates liked these things, but then frantically started to look for another shirt with a tiny logo like the consolidated one from his first trip to Logoland that Davis, aka the Necktats, had taken him on. The sellout and the Necktats ran over to the rack and started wearing clothes. The A.A. Bible stepped back and wondered why his bandmates liked these things, but then frantically started to look for another shirt with a tiny logo like the consolidated one from his first trip to Logoland that Davis, aka the Necktats, had taken him on. To his dismay, there was no such shirt on the rack. Out of the corner of his eye, he luckily noticed something yellow flying towards his head. He spun around and caught it, examined it, and realized it was a Flame Boy hoodie with a massive logo on the front. He put it on because he did not know what else to do. The recording of the track went surprisingly quick because of all the machinery that was available at Skinny Records. However, the A.A. Bible was again struggling to find his comfort zone playing this new style that was being thrust upon him. Again, he did not bother to listen to the words when recording the song. The movie production area of the airplane hangar was impressive to say the least. One thing that the A.A. Bible thought was strange is that Skinny Stephen, with all his equipment, had the band lip-sync the song and pretend the music was being played. This was all done in front of a white sheet, with bright lights blasting down on the band from above. They did one take and Skinny turned the lights out and dropped another bedsheet down from above and "Go back home now, please" was scrawled on the sheet in red ink. The three men looked at him with confusion on their faces, and Skinny simply used the flick of his wrist to usher them out of the airplane hangar and back out into the dark roads of Kansas. They found their way to the airport by way of the stars. Sixth drink. It took 3 weeks for Skinny Stephen to contact the newly marked Power Pop Bubblegum Punk Band. He randomly appeared at the garage one afternoon with a pile of papers in tow. He was pulling a fast-talking Johnny and speaking so fast the band members could barely follow him. He pulled out some papers which he called contractual formality and quickly got the members of Kick 482 to sign them. After the contracts were inked in red, Skinny threw a disc on the table and motioned up towards the beat-up TV in the corner of the garage that was used for watching Senators games. The sellout put the disc in the VCD player, and what they were greeted with blew their minds in individual ways. Somehow Skinny had turned the white sheet behind them into a full video full of stuff that never happened. There were wakeboards going, bikinis shining, clothing glowing. Basically, it was a power pop punk extravaganza that was full of trends in a beach setting. The sellout and the necktats were all over the moon. The AA Bible, on the other hand, was confused, worried, and scared. But the main thing on his mind was, how the fuck did they get my hat on sideways, too? Skinny laid out the plans to put the new video on something called the Internet, which was some sort of computer thing the band had never heard of. He said it would garner the new demographic and the band was looking to acquire as fans. He explained those type of people hand on something called Audio Galaxy, and that program would somehow boost them into Tom Cochrane levels. Skinny told the band to expect worldwide tour dates soon, along with major marketing deals. He explained that the formula was legit and to expect a private jet soon. Skinny abruptly stopped talking, walked out of the garage, and rode the stars all the way back to Kansas. The band was left alone in the garage with the video stuck in the VCD machine on loop. The three of them just sat there staring at the video on the old tube TV, wondering what was to come. Again, the AA Bible did not bother to listen to the words to the song. The booze bottle had no clue what had transpired with the band, and the AA Bible seemed to keep it that way. After about 4 days of sitting wondering about the sideways hat and Skinny's business aspirations, the AA Bible decided to hunt out his ousted band friend and check on his well-being. He finally found him, and to his surprise he was drinking a light beer and appeared coherent. The booze bottle explained that he was beginning to think he might have a little bit of a problem, and asked his friend if he thought he had been catapulted from the band because the sellout simply thought the necktats was cooler than him, or was it a booze thing? The two longtime friends then sat in silence drinking light beer in the park while feeling the chill of fall. After a 12-pack of cans and a pack of Chesterfield Kings, the two parted ways and vowed to keep in better contact with each other and not let the band drama undermine their friendship. The booze bottle felt that the AA Bible was just glad his friend did not find out about Skinny's plans. A few days after the hangout session, Skinny contacted the band again through registered mail. His question was met by honesty, and he was told that maybe it was a bit of both, but we will never have the definite answer to the question, so it is no use dwelling on it. He was told that if he thinks he has a problem, that he can fix it. After all, he played that tight style of punk that really has no fans. He can do anything with this. All it was a piece of gold-colored paper with what the sellout thought must be email addresses or something. One for each band member, because it was their names following the band name and then AOL.com. The landline then rang in the garage, and it was Skinny. He instructed the Power Pop punk superstars to check their emails regularly and interact with fans. He said the reasoning was that it would make them seem like they were still DIY and open to everybody. Skinny quickly updated the three punks and informed them that he had gotten some DJs in town to play the single Sinking Ship during prime listening hours, and had managed to get the video airtime on a major independent network's music interests, Much Music. Only trouble was it was in Canada, and it was half French. The song was played on the radio the next day, and it was then that the AA Bible listened to the song's lyrics. He could not believe what he heard. The song was about the booze bottle and his drinking, and how he's not welcome around the garage anymore. The only thought in his mind was, this is going to get bad. The song was an instant hit. The first time the booze bottle heard Sinking Ship on the radio, he thought it was one of his old songs for 8 seconds, and thought, weird, how did they manage to get out there in radio land? After about 5 seconds, he realized it was not him drumming because it did not have the tight under-over snare technique. This was something different, but it was the sellout singing. He began to listen to the song and quickly realized that the song was about him. The lyrics were extremely hurtful and stabbed at his soul. The song painted him as an unreliable fall-down who can't fix himself. There was one line in particular that really rubbed him the wrong way. The song says, "Can't say I miss him around," which he felt was a stab at a friendship, and he felt betrayed. He turned the radio off and went to buy some cheap lager from the grocery store. He got drunk and decided to crash the garage. When he arrived, he was met by a lonely AA Bible strumming on an acoustic guitar looking concerned. The two spoke about the song, and it came to the same conclusion, that the song was out of line and hopefully it would lose popularity soon and fade into obscurity. The booze bottle commented on the Necktats drumming style, calling it a mix between Headley and Simon and Garfunkel. The AA Bible agreed under his breath and changed the topic. The booze bottle threatened to burn the garage down and stormed off into the night. They both know he would never do it. The two friends were sadly wrong about the single's popularity, as it was rising daily. A couple of days later, the booze bottle noticed that it had hit number 2 on the Billboard charts. He immediately called his friend to rant. His old pal agreed with his frustration and explained he would be mad if he saw those numbers too. He explained that he had nothing to do with the lyrics and was not sure about the direction in which the band was headed. He told his friend to ignore the song as much as possible and to focus on more positive things in his life, like his decision to switch to light beer. The booze bottle agreed and said he would rip up the tape deck out of his car in order to never hear Sinking Ship ever again. After the success of the single, it was shared with the members of the band by Skinny that he had put false names on MP3 files on Audio Galaxy and LimeWire advertising popular songs, but when you download the file, you get Sinking Ship. The single got a lot of numbers, which made other major record labels and companies and sponsors take notice. Everyone was talking, and the single went double platinum. The endorsements and the advertisements started immediately after. Skinny's idea was such a recipe for success that soon after the band and their likeness were everywhere, on Coke bottles, billboards, major professional sports sidelines. They even had holograms of the members outside of the former place of CBGB dancing. Skinny somehow even managed to get a pic of the band on native cigarette packs, which the booze bottle has been known to smoke. They had made it, or they had. The AA Bible sat back and let it all go. What else could you do at this point? The booze bottle started seeing all the billboards of the band decked out in their West 49 gear and their sideways hats, and it began to really eat at him. It became an obsession of hate which consumed him. Eventually, he started driving around trying to find the billboards just so he could get mad at them. He quickly gave up on light beer and switched back to firewater. Because the band's picture was plastered all over the Coke bottles, he refused to buy mix and began drinking the firewater straight. It was the beginnings of a very dark period in his life. He drove out to the native reserve to buy some tax-exempt cheap cigarettes which he always smoked, and to his disbelief, horror, and shock, he saw a pic of the band on the pack with the hats on sideways smoking peace pipes. He still bought the carton, however, but on the way home he started hating it so much that he gave the entire carton of cigs to the first homeless person he saw when he got back to the city. He had too much pride to smoke them. After a few hours of hating on the band, he realized that he really needed a cigarette. He was too scared to buy tailor-mades in case they were on the packs in the convenience store, so he resorted to picking up butts off the ground and rolling them in Vogue rolling papers. When he finally managed to roll the dry, stale used tobacco, he lit the smoke and thought to himself, "It's not half bad," while instantly getting a headache. After his hate obsession consumed him, he decided to give his car away and walk everywhere because he hated the billboards so much. He gave it away for free to the first homeless person he saw. When he went home and flicked on the black and white tube TV with rabbit ears, he quickly noticed that the band was on every channel constantly. He actually watched an episode of America's Got Talent, and some group covered sinking ship and won the contest. It was at that point that he decided to intentionally not pay his electricity bill in order to not have to turn the TV on ever again. The lights went dark soon after. After a few days of sitting in the complete darkness drinking straight firewater and smoking ashtray cigarettes, the booze bottle came to the realization that his hate obsession was making his life mirror that of a homeless person. He thought, "Oh my God, I'm basically homeless, and by choice." He decided he needed to step away from the obsession and reevaluate things. He settled on a trip to the land of Brad, also known as the Tibetan Plateau. But he was not going to stay for 7 years. He only planned to stay for 7 days. When the AA Bible got news that his troubled friend was stepping away for a while, he realized that he was also in need of some soul searching. He decided to take an indefinite leave from the band. He remembered an old friend of his who used to play local shows that no one would go to, named Fat Michael, and remembered that he used to give people good life advice. He was told to check an area of the city called Chaz. He had no idea what it was. He fired up his transit positioning system, which led him to the Chaz. When he arrived, he realized there was no Chaz, and there never had been one. He mused that it is a stupid idea, then got the hell out of depressing Portland and rode the Greyhound all the way down the coast. When he got home, he was determined to find Michael. He asked around the scene, and there were whispers that he had moved to Alaska and now lives in a broken-down school bus in the middle of nowhere wilderness called the Magic Studio alone. The AA Bottle decided that this info must be credible and decided to make the dangerous trek to the land of Sarah Palin. He mused that he might be able to see Russia from her house. He jumped the first biplane out of his city and landed in Forks, Alaska, the quiet town with the small native reserve on the outskirts and people that do not age. He ate at some local diner, then fired up his transit positioning system and rode with the sled dogs to the Magic production studio in the middle of nowhere wilderness. When he arrived, it was dusk and he felt desolate and alone, but managed to locate the bus within an hour. When he got closer, he noticed a man sitting in an Adirondack chair looking at something he couldn't quite make out. When he got closer, he noticed that the man on the Adirondack chair was watching this sinking ship video on a massive bedsheet tied between two evergreen trees using a projector. He had a look on his face of concern, bewilderment, and lost hope for the scene. It was at that moment the AA Bible knew he had found his man. He walked up and announced his presence. Fat Michael offered him a random plant to eat. The AA Bible somehow knew it was a bad idea to eat a plant and rejected it. Fat Michael nodded and threw the plant on the snowy ground. The two friends from scenes long ago instantly reconnected like they had never been apart. The AA Bible immediately raised his concerns with the new direction of the band and the sideways hats. Fat Michael laughed and motioned towards the playing video and gave it a thumbs down sign. The AA Bible nodded in approval. His record company owing friend began frantically scribbling in a notebook and passed it over. It explained his take on the situation that the AA Bible had landed. It read, "You should think about where you came from in the beginning and what is truly important to you. You must evaluate things using emotion, not be blinded by things that appear larger in the mirror. Sometimes things in life change. It's inevitable. You must find a balance and try to make that change that benefits the people and the things in your life you truly love. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. That's life. Keep the things you cherish close to you and do not let them slip away from problems that can be fixed. Love is hard to find, and who knows if you will ever love anything new as much as the old one. If that happens, you will forever be thinking of the one that got left behind. After all, look at us both. We still believe in the kind of punk music that really has no fans because it's dear to our hearts. We didn't give up on it when so many did. You should try to do that with every aspect of your life." The AA Bible read the words and took them to heart. He looked at his friend and with water in his eye gave him a head nod. He knew what to do now. He passed the book back and Fat Michael wrote a few words and handed it off again. He explained that he was writing this stuff down because he has been alone with the bus for so long that he forgot how to talk. The two men looked at each other and the AA Bible understood that his time at the bus was up and that it was magical. He fired up the snow dogs in the sled and got ready to barrel back to places that are sunny and long in geographic shape. Before he began his cross-continent adventure, Fat Michael flipped him a homemade button that said 40 years in on it in marker. The button was placed in his pocket for safekeeping. He whipped the snow dogs and they were off. He never made it to Sarah Palin's house. He did not want to see Russia. After all, Russia invaded Ukraine. 11th drink. The two remaining members of the band that had drastically altered their style began to have serious questions. They were wondering why, with their catapult to superstardom, they had not received any funds, even though they had constantly been generating substantial amounts of revenue for Skinny. The sellout pressured his friend in neck tats to contact Skinny and see what the problem was. After all, Skinny was his connection, and that connection started the transformation of the band and its rise to worldwide success. 11th drink. The two remaining members of the band that had drastically altered their style began to have serious questions. They were wondering why, with their catapult to superstardom, they had not received any funds, even though they had constantly been generating substantial amounts of revenue for Skinny. The sellout pressured his friend in neck tats to contact Skinny and see what the problem was. After all, Skinny was his connection, and that connection started the transformation of the band and its rise to worldwide success. The problem was they had not reaped the benefits of the success. The two remaining band members started becoming increasingly nervous about the situation and began to drink heavily over the course of the next few months. Finally, Skinny contacted the two recently addicted band members and unveiled the plan for the band's first world tour. The plans were sent by fax and there were a lot of pages of information for the two worried band members to digest. They were worried, and their fear of the length of the tour and the massive amounts of tour stops would be impossible to do. This created a rift in the bond between the two men, but in the end, the sellout convinced the Necktats to contact Skinny about their concerns. After all, he vouched for him in the beginning. The phone call was quick, and the tone in Skinny's voice led the Necktats to believe he meant business, and that the two remaining band members had better get ready for a grueling tour. When the Necktats voiced his concerns about the departure of the guitarist and the fact that they couldn't play with only two people, Skinny told them he had acquired a replacement guitarist, Little Wheezy, and not to worry, that he skated. They were instructed to wait in the garage until further instructions were given and to get ready for the tour, which started in 4 months. The phone call ended, and this information was relayed to the sellout. The two power punk superstars continued to drink heavily for the next 2 months, awaiting the instructions from Skinny, but they never came. This caused them to stop eating and stop sleeping, the whole while continuing to abuse spirits. One night the sellout decided to fire up the internet and check out this Little Wheezy. After about an hour of a slow connectivity, the web page finally loaded, and he was shocked to see that Wheezy was a put-together rapper from New Orleans. His video entitled Bling Bling, and he seemed to really like jewelry. The two power punk superstars continued to drink heavily for the next 2 months, awaiting the instructions from Skinny, but they never came. This caused them to stop eating and stop sleeping, the whole while continuing to abuse spirits. One night the sellout decided to fire up the internet and check out this Little Wheezy. After about an hour of slow connectivity, the web page finally loaded, and he was shocked to see that Wheezy was a put-together rapper from New Orleans. His video was entitled Bling Bling, and he seemed to really like jewelry. It was at this time that the sellout started to question his friendship with the Necktats and wondered if he even cared about that style of punk that really has no fans. He felt lost and alone and continued to drink. 1 month before the tour was slated to begin, there was a thunderous knock on the garage door. The sellout opened the shutter to be greeted by a large man in a dark suit pulling a suitcase on wheels. Turns out he was a lawyer sent in behalf of Skinny. The imposing figure wheeled his case into the garage and began pulling paperwork from the wheelie case. He laid the paperwork out, then the only table in the garage, and explained to the two men experiencing DTs that they'd better listen to what he said. He explained that he was sent to them as Skinny's legal representative, a good gesture to explain to them their contractual obligations with the hope of settling these obligations out of court before matters become more serious. The two boys in sideways hats with yellow eyes began frantically scanning the paperwork laid before them and still could not make sense of any of it. The lawyer explained that the two band members were contractually obligated to work for Skinny for the rest of their lives for only the bare necessities of life. All monetary gain was to be property of Skinny, and if they did not follow the obligations, they would end up in ADX Florence forever, segregated and alone. The man in the suit looked serious. It was at that moment that the lawyer looked over at the landline telephone on the wall, and the two West 49 models realized that when that hotline bling, it only means one thing. The lawyer walked out of the garage and the door slowly closed. 12th drink. The two-man band had no other choice but to meet Little Wheezy and get the ball rolling. The grill-encrusted new riffmaster showed up at the garage and was quickly told by the man who coined Bling Bling that in fact he did not know how to play guitar. He explained that Skinny's instructions were to air guitar and play the part. The two put together power bubblegum candy cane pop punk band members had had enough. They also wondered how the AA Bible was able to escape the threat of ADX Florence for stepping away from the band. They decided to reach Skinny on a computer program called ICQ. This program had a video function they decided to use and were able to make communications with Skinny. The first thing that the two brought up was the easy departure of the AA Bible from the band. It was explained that there was a set date in the contract in which a band member could man overboard and have no repercussions. The date was the date which Sepultura's Morbid Visions album came out, which oddly enough, the Booze Bottle's favorite album. The AA Bible asked why he chose that album's release date for the cutoff date, and he explained that it was in memorandum for the departed drummer. Skinny was told that in fact that album was in the making and had not been released yet. He told them if hypothetically that album did come out on September 9th, then that would be the date that the AA Bible had stepped back before that date. Skinny told the band members that their job now was to create puppet cadence and fake their songs when on tour. The band members knew what to do and reluctantly agreed. After all, it's all they could really do at this point. It was on that day that Little Wheezy introduced the two men to codeine water. The tour began and the stress and exhaustion kicked in immediately. The members of Kick 482 coped with these problems by consuming large amounts of codeine water, which Little Wheezy had introduced them to, and not eating or drinking water. It was when the band was on the seventh continent, Wheezy noticed that his band members' eyes were a tone of yellow. The two brushed off this worrisome change in their eyes. The harder the tour got, the more they drank. The longer the tour got, the more they drank. Drinking codeine water was their crutch. It propped them up in order to create Milli Vanilli style puppet cadence. As the tour winded down, it was apparent that the two men in the sideways hats were ill. The two would experience withdrawals about 15 hours after their last drink. They had both had what Wheezy could only describe as some kind of seizure, and they were very underweight. For some reason, the codeine water had no negative effects on Wheezy, and he tried to get his Milli Vanilli-like bandmates to seek help. The tour felt like a never-ending story except for there was no magical dragon to fly the band around. It was a 1959 Soviet hand-me-down airplane the Skinny had magically acquired. The tour lasted roughly 2.4 years, and when the band had fulfilled their contractual obligations to Skinny, they were parachuted into the garage where they stayed for a long while. The 13th drink. Drunk enough to talk. The booze bottle returned from his trip abroad and decided it was time to reconnect with his lifelong friend, the AA Bible. He decided to show up unannounced at his flat. When he arrived, he was greeted by an overjoyed AA Bottle. He said his mother had gifted him a Macintosh computer that was even able to connect to the online realm. The two sat at the computer and the AA Bible explained his Alaskan getaway. The AA Bible decided to Baidu 40 years in, Fat Michael's record label. After hours of looking, they fell on his webpage. It was a black and white picture that was blurry and hard to make out of the bus with some blurry words that said, "At this time there were no bands signed to the label, but they were actively searching for bands that play that style of punk that really has no fans." The two friends agreed that that was Mike's style and wondered if he would ever in fact sign a band. After all, bands that play that style of punk were becoming less and less common. After the two had seen the only needed webpage on the information highway, they decided to get into some light beers and chat. The AA Bible asked how his friend's excursion to Tibet was, and he answered that it was super uneventful and nothing happened. It was at this point in the conversation that the booze bottle told his friend that he was thinking about maybe trying to make some positive changes in his life, such as cutting back on his drinking and finding a hobby or something. He was greeted with positive vibes from his relieved friend who asked if he knows how to do it and that he was there for him as his friend already knew that. The booze bottle asked his friend if he thinks he needs to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and his friend replied, I have known you for 25 years. I have seen you in good times and bads. I have watched you slip and I have seen you fall. I know that you have depression problems that you try ever so hard not to deal with. I don't think AA is for you. I don't think you need to give in to a higher power. I mean, you're not even religious. In my eyes, what you need to do is stop using alcohol as a way to always be depressed and as a tool to be antisocial. Just chill out and let your life unfold. I am sure if we stick together, you can get to the place in life you want to be. Do not go to AA. I found a program called Concurrent Disorders offered by CAMH when I was using the computer. I think you would benefit from it and be able to see that your depression and anger run parallel with your alcohol abuse. Whatever if it turns out to be annoying or whatever, you can always walk away, right? Just think about it and try not to let that band stuff enrage you. I quit because it's not the same thing anymore. I know you know that too. Just try to be calm, cool, and in charge of your life, and I think you'll be okay. His alcoholic friend looked at him and had a confused look in his face. He told his friends that he does believe in a higher power, and that power is Buddha, and his little 8-year-old buddy, P.K. He's cool, man. He skates, he said to his confused-looking compadre. He informed his friend that indeed he is cool. He skates now. He then said thank you and took his buddy no AA. He should call the San Diego Psychiatric Hospital with the Concurrent Disorders Program was at and try to get an appointment. The two men sat there looking at the web page of the bus. They decided to fire up the LimeWire sharing program and download a copy of the sinking ship video. They sat laughing at it for what seemed like hours. Later in the night, and with an empty case of light beer on the floor, the AA Bible decided to check the banned email that Skinny gave him. The account was still active, and it had a very concerning email from a fan in Finland. The subject was too many posers. The fan said that he was on a journey to the stars and it was his plan to go get Skinny's airplane hangar in Kansas and burn it down because he thinks that there are too many posers in the scene. He said he would be in contact with the AA Bible soon, and the email was signed Durzum. Two friends had no idea what to think about the AOL email. They in the end figured it was a prank and that the person was not serious. That night they both fell asleep sitting beside each other in front of the Macintosh. 14th drink. The two men with their hats on right way soon realized that they had a lot of time on their hands and decided to put their musical talents on the back burner and get a hobby that they could use to pass the time. The friends went to the onlines to try to find something of interest. They noticed there was a large amount of content on the internet about aliens and UFOs. There were groups dedicated to finding UFOs, web pages that pore over government documents to try and prove that aliens exist, sites with drawings of what aliens may look like. The two former band members decided to delve face first into the murky world of aliens on the web. They decided to form an academy which was slowly dedicated to proving aliens exist through pictures, videos, and audio files. They decided to name the group to the University, Academy of Arts and Science. The alien hunting duo headed straight for Henry's cameras to get the needed gear. They wanted to make a web page, but either of them had any idea how to do so, so they put that off. Turns out the boys were good at alien hunting and came forth with some convincing proof that unidentified flying objects are in fact real and aliens have been on Earth. NASA got wind of this research and offered to buy the research in order to bury it so this info would not be seen by the public eye. They said it was a public order issue. The punk rock alien hunters agreed to sell NASA the research and were handsomely rewarded. All in, they received $37.5 million. Now hobbyless again, the two newly minted men decided to sit in front of the Macintosh. The AA Bible decided to check his banned email, and to the total and utter shock of both were greeted by another email from their fan Durzum. Attached was a picture of Skinny's air hanger on fire with the caption "No Trends." The email said that he had completed his journey to the stars and was now in the process of acquiring a work visa for the Shockmen's country in order to emigrate there permanently. Just then there was a bang at the front door. It startled and shocked the rockers. When they opened the door, they were greeted by a skinny man in his early 20s with long, straight blonde hair and blue eyes. He kind of looked like a modern-day incantation of Jesus Christ. He was wearing a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey, jeans, and 80-hole cherry red Doc Martens. The man in the Leafs scarves handed the AA Bible a piece of cardboard that read, "Hello, I am Durzum from Finland. My spoken English is a bit spotty, so I will communicate with you by writing on pieces of cardboard. I am here to start a thrash band." The two confused friends motioned this man in the Jesus Christ pose into the apartment and offered him a light beer. Durzum declined respectfully. He noticed a drum kit in the corner and started to play a drum style which they had never heard and was very original. The sound was mayhem-inspiring with its shock and awe. They realized the drummer was using a single kick drum to create the sound of repetitive bass kicks, which in turn created a strong hammering-like sound. Durzum called this style the Finnish Hellhammer and vowed to teach it to the booze bottle so he can alienate himself from the rest of the world, just like Durzum and his Toronto Maple Leafs jersey did. It was at that time the booze bottle, lit from a few light beers on an empty stomach, wrote on the piece of cardboard, "Durzum, you do know it's now the glasses that are running things over there in Leafland, right?" Motioning at his jersey. "This is Senstown," was scrawled on the cardboard dialogue maker. Durzum raised his fist and quickly wrote the Battle of Ontario and pumped his fist in the air quick and violent. Durzum then noticed a guitar in the corner and picked it up and played in a manner in which the two punks had never heard. It was like the guitar was crying. He called it the Scandinavian Guitar of Tears. He vowed to teach it to the AA Bible. Over time, the three worked on an instrumental project combining the Hellhammer and the crying guitars, and have invented their own unique sound. The sole purpose of the band was alienating the entire world from them. They named their newly squared style simply Order. The three members of this newly formed thrash band dedicated a lot of time and effort into perfecting their craft. They eventually put out 50 copies of their instrumental and named it Bottel, named after the struggles the drummer had with alcohol abuse. They put a picture of Skinny's burning air hanger recording studio on the cover, "No Trends." It was exactly 45 minutes and 15 seconds in length. 15th drink. Meanwhile, back at the garage, the sellout and the necktats were in rough shape. They were both shaky and weak with yellow eyes. The codeine water and the stress of the tour had taken their toll. Little Wheezy had to go back to the big city in the south coast, but before he left, offered to take the two defeated men to the emergency room. After much bickering, it was agreed upon they would go. At the Grey Sloan Memorial Hospital, a battery of tests was done on the men whose hats had fallen off. They were both told, after a couple of hours, that they had cirrhosis of the liver and they needed to stop consuming codeine water immediately or they would have a good chance of dying. They were told that any further medical care was going to get quite expensive. They were asked by the secretary if they held private insurance. The next texted Skinny to ask him about the coverage, and he told the two hunting units to drink more and sure. As they were sitting in the waiting room for someone to offer them help, when they glanced across the room and saw Ian Mackay staring over at them. He had his arms crossed and was just shaking his head, with a look of total disgust on his face. It was at that moment that the two men in need of liver transplants realized that the new style of power pop tart bubblegum punk they were producing is bad, and that it had ruined their lives. They had chosen fame and success over what they had been doing for so long. The Necktats introduced the sellout to Skinny, and the Necktats changed the drumming, and all the while being transformed into something they were not. That was it. That was their downfall. At that moment, they looked up at the TV on the wall and noticed Sinking Ship was playing. They both burst out crying. The security guard took notice of this and asked the two gutted men to kindly leave the hospital. The four jaundicated eyes took the subway back to the garage, where they were greeted by a mysterious copy of No Trends, by order. The 8-track was put in the player, and what they heard was magic. They wondered how the kick drum was kicked so many times in a row like that. They marveled at how the guitars sounded like they were crying and how it melted into the repeatedly smashed kick drum. This was music that these men would never be able to produce. The sellout cannot shred well enough, and the Necktats are not tough enough to hammer like that. Upon further inspection of the liner notes, it became clear who was responsible for such music. It was the drummer they kicked out of the band, the guy who resigned, and some other guy named Durzum, whose pick on the album was just a flash of light. The two yellow-eyed Kick 482 members became the butt end of every joke in town now that their popularity had disappeared. The billboards were defaced with faces such as losers or wannabes. The men were so poor that they had to collect cans to get by now. They hated when they would find a soda can with their picture on it. To top it off, both constantly jonesed for codeine water, but they could never drink it again. Their lives had truly changed for the worst. Even they could not have seen this coming. 16th drink. The band order decided to do a secret tour and play in super small venues and empty flats around the communist world. They toured East Germany, North Korea, Czechoslovakia, China, Vietnam, Cuba, Nepal, and Bulgaria. The respective governments of these nations were okay with the shows because they were all in awe at the hellhammer and the way the band members mixed in the crying guitars so it blends perfectly with the kick drum. The tour was short and the band lost money, but everyone is rich, so it did not matter. They did manage to give away their 50 albums that they printed, 5 in each country. The showgoers were pumped to hear an original band that plays hard, no-trends thrash. Over the course of the tour, the band coined their sound as red metal and cemented themselves in the underground communist punk scene. Overall, the time was well spent, and the bands even learned some things about Lenin, Marx, Ho Chi Minh, Mao, Castro, and some guy who wasn't really a communist from Mexico named Subcomandante Marcos. He just looked cool. When the tour was over, the band broke up because red metal was meant to be a short-lived genre that only had one album. That is all it was, one album. The 3 band members went their separate ways, but stayed in close contact for the rest of their lives. Durzum decided to dedicate his time with the church and became an altar boy and full-time church volunteer. The AA Bible decided to become a humanitarian and hooked up with Sean Penn and tried to fix problems around the world, spending a large amount of time in Haiti. Believe it or not, the booze bottle met a girl and settled down and had a beautiful little daughter. He became a stay-at-home dad and was able to beat his demons, and he even still drinks a little bit from time to time. Light beer, of course. The sellout and the neck tats decided it was time to end it all, and each took a big styrofoam cup full of codeine water. The doctors at Grey's Anatomy were right. They both died instantly. The garage was torn down for a condo development. There were rumors that Durzum poisoned the two men who lost it all for being posers, but this story is hard to verify. Skinny? Well, Skinny became business partners with a man named Percy Miller and decided to drop bubblegum chocolate milk infused punk and focus on producing New Orleans gangster rap. That he did, and lots of it. He received the insurance money from when Durzum burnt down the airplane hangar. He rebuilt in New Orleans and co-founded No Limit Records. The rest is history. The style of punk that really has no fans became harder and harder to find. People moved on with their lives and it became a bunch of good memories that caused lifelong bonds from a chapter in their lives, which is now closed. There are still a few bands around, and from time to time an old band will do a reunion tour. That's about it. Oh, and Fat Michael finally signed a band to his label. No Effects. Rest in peace, melodic punk, 1986 to 2002.